Good morning and very warm welcome to this TSystems, IDC, Intel and AWS event on the topic of how to be a game changer, data-driven transformation with integrated edge and cloud strategies. My name is Carla Arendt and I'm going to be your moderator today. And we have put together a very interesting agenda for you. First of all, we will have a 20-minute presentation where I will present the results from a joint research project that we have done on the topic of edge cloud and the emerging use cases and what we can learn from digital leaders. Then we will have a panel discussion with a very interesting panel with many experts that you can ask questions. And then we have also a Q&A session at the end. But please do enter your questions at any point in the chat, and we will try and answer them as promptly as possible. This is really an interactive session where you can ask us any questions you want on the topic of edge and cloud and how to be a game changer. And you can also ask your questions in German if you want, and I will then translate them to our panelists so they can give you an answer. My name is Carla Arendt. I head up IDC's cloud research for Europe, and me and my team, we have conducted a very interesting research study for TSystems, Intel and AWS on the topic of digital leaders and how digital leaders are having success with their digital products and services and how they're using edge and cloud. And I will share these results shortly. But I also want to already now give you a sneak peek of the fantastic panel that we have put together so that you can already look forward to the experts that we will be talking to later on. So we have Cześć from Intel, we have Michael from AWS, we have Martin and Dirk from Deutsche Telekom and Dirk from TSystems. And they bring together a broad spectrum of perspectives on the topic of edge and cloud. What are the right strategies? What are the use cases that they see emerging? And also, what are some of the customer examples that they've been working on recently? So I very much look forward to the panel discussion. But before we get there, I will share with you what we can learn from digital leaders, so from organizations who are already quite far ahead on their digital journey, and share some of the best practices that we can see from these digital leaders on how they have implemented cloud and edge solutions and what are the use cases that they are working on. But first of all, I want to talk about, why it is so important to talk about cloud and edge. And that is because we are now entering the digital first era. And what we mean by that is that from 2022 onwards, that is IDC's prediction, we will expect to see 65% of the GDP in Europe to be driven by digital products and services. And that means that the majority of the industry of our economy will be based on these digital products and services, but that also means that more than 50% of your revenues will be driven by digital products and services. And if you're now thinking, okay, we're not quite there yet, then don't despair. It's still an aspirational goal, but what we've seen in the past 2 years is that organizations have really accelerated their digital strategies because the digital solutions helped them to get through the pandemic and helped them to enable their workforce to continue to work, even though we went into lockdown across Europe. And it also helped them to stay in touch with their partners, with their supply chain partners, but also with their go-to-market partners, and to still reach out to customers and to create great customer experiences. So we have seen a huge acceleration in investments in digital solutions, and cloud and edge are really the technologies that are the foundation for these new digital solutions that have been emerging. And that's why it's so important to understand, what is the best architecture for these cloud to edge continuum, what are the use cases that you can build on these cloud to edge architectures, and what are the success factors that we can learn from. But first of all, I wanted to introduce this study to you. So we interviewed more than 300 IT and business decision makers across European countries. And you can see the split by country here. At the top, we also had a good mix of different company sizes, starting from the mid-market with 500 full-time employees and then all the way to large enterprise. We had a very select set of industries that we've been looking at. So these are the asset-intensive industries, primarily manufacturing, but also transport, logistics, construction, utilities, oil and gas, and other resource industries. So a very specific set of industries that have been surveyed. And then what we did, based on certain criteria that we had defined early on in the process, we have categorized the respondents into digital leaders, digital regulars, and digital followers to show some kind of maturity. So how far are organizations along this digital journey, and how mature are they? And we have identified 10 questions that we use to calculate if organizations are a leader or a follower. And what we saw from the study is that business success really depends on digital success. So 71% of organizations who fall into this digital leaders category either maintained their revenue or even grew their revenue in 2020. So that was the year when the pandemic hit and we all had to move to digital solutions in an accelerated fashion. We also see that there's a change in terms of the decision-making balance. So traditionally, we would have said that decisions about technology topics like cloud strategy or edge strategy would be primarily been taken by the CIO, maybe the CTO, if the organization has a CTO. Also sometimes, especially when we talk about edge decisions, we see chief of operations take these decisions. But actually what we've seen is in this survey that the CEO is now the second most important decision maker for decisions around cloud and edge. And that is a big change. And the reason why the CEO is getting more and more involved in these technology decisions as well is that as this digital platform that consists of cloud and edge solutions becomes so important for the business, then the CEO also wants to get involved in understanding and influencing these decisions, because now the business is truly IT. And I've been following the IT industry for more than 20 years, and we've been talking about this business and IT alignment for many years. But when more than 50% of the organization's revenue is generated by digital products and services, then IT truly is the business. And that's why we see that the CEO is getting much more involved in these decisions as well. And from other studies, we have also seen that it's actually very important to get this top management support for these digital strategies. And one of the reasons why sometimes IT projects are not successful is if the top management is not getting involved. So it's actually really good news that that the CEO is now also getting more hands-on with these technology decisions. If we think about, what does it take to be successful as a digital business, then launching digital products and services is, of course, the key capability that that digital leaders need to excel at. And in our study, we asked, how difficult has it been to launch these new digital products and services? And what's very interesting here is that actually the leaders said it was a big challenge. And that surprised us a little bit, because we would have thought that the digital leaders are actually excelling at launching new digital products and services. But when you think about it, the scale that digital leaders are trying to achieve is much bigger than what the other less mature organizations are trying to achieve. So it actually makes sense that if you're really pushing the boundaries for what's possible and you want to launch digital products and services not just once per year, once per quarter, but you really want to launch them every day of the year, then of course you will meet some challenges in the beginning that you need to overcome. And that is actually one of the key findings from this study, is that the digital leaders are operating at a much higher level of complexity than their peers, and they are right now in the process of learning best practices on how to operate with this level of complexity. Then again, when we still think about, what does it take to be a digital leader, or what does it take to be successful in the digital world, then there are some key capabilities that we have identified that we think should be in place if you want to be successful. And when we have asked digital leaders which of these capabilities have you implemented in your organization, then they are focusing on intelligent security and digital trust. Which makes sense, because if the digital solutions are not trusted solutions, then customers will not adopt them. They also focus on this cultural shift towards a DevOps or DevSecOps culture in the organization. They are also trying to automate a lot of the processes, and they're using AI ops in order to have machines help them to operate their IT more efficiently. Again, because they are dealing with these very high levels of complexity, and they want to use machine learning and artificial intelligence solutions to help them to operate this complexity better and to drive much higher levels of automation. And multi-cloud is the lowest one on this list of these 5 capabilities that we asked about. But as you will see later, actually multi-cloud is playing a critical role as well in enabling these cloud to edge solutions. If we look at what are the business benefits that digital leaders are expecting to get from edge solutions specifically, then they are very much focused on increasing operational efficiency, but also creating a much better customer experience, reducing cost of IT, being more resilient, but also then have a much faster time to market. And that actually tells a story that they want to innovate. They need to innovate faster, and they use edge solutions to innovate, to create these digital products and services faster than they could before, but also do it at the right cost and in a very efficient way. So what we don't want to see is investment in new technologies like edge and cloud, and then the cost spiraling out of control because we don't have the right lifecycle management in place for these solutions. So actually, the good news from this study is that digital leaders are really balancing the need for innovation with the need for efficiency and resiliency and cost control. So it's not just innovate and we don't care about the cost, but it's really innovate, but in a very efficient and cost-efficient way as well. When we look at what are the edge use cases, then it was very interesting to see that for this specific set of organizations that we have looked at in our study, they are very much focusing on, of course, the equipment that they're using in their day-to-day operations. So they are focusing on process automation and optimization. They are also focusing on asset and equipment monitoring and optimization, because these are asset-heavy industries, so it makes a lot of sense. But then, of course, they are also focusing on any use case that helps with the customer experience, because that's one of the key benefits they see. And then they also link it back to threat intelligence, monitoring and prevention, but also to fraud and loss detection, because they have such a big focus on security. So a good mix of, again, use cases that help with operations, use cases that help with customer experience, and use cases that help with security and digital trust. If we look at edge or where edge solutions are running, then our survey tells a very clear story that edge solutions are running in conjunction with the public cloud, and digital leaders are really pushing towards this integration between public cloud and edge solutions, whereas the followers are really still very much starting from on-premise, from their own data center or their own production site, for example, and are not making the connection to the public cloud to the same extent that digital leaders do. So very clearly, digital leaders are using edge always in conjunction with the public cloud. And in our panel discussion in just a few minutes, we will talk much more about what these edge to cloud solutions can look like. But then if we look at what types of cloud are digital leaders using, then public cloud is clearly the first choice, but also private cloud solutions are still very popular. And so when we think about, what does a successful cloud strategy look like, then we see that hybrid cloud architectures that actually connect private cloud and the public cloud are the ones that we expect to see for the foreseeable future, for the next 5 or 10 years, because private cloud in Europe is still such an important part of the IT setup. So when I talk about cloud, I'm not just talking about public cloud, but I really talk cloud in the broadest sense, including on-premise private cloud, and really think about cloud much more as an architecture, as a way to operate your IT, rather than where physically these workloads are located. And our vision for the future is actually that organizations who are building this digital platform want to have a unified operating environment across public cloud, private cloud, hosted private cloud, and the edge, so that you can operate this as one platform end to end. This is still a vision. We are not quite there yet, but we are working towards that as an industry, and we are actually taking big steps forward to making this vision come true. If we look at what are the key challenges that organizations need to overcome when they look at cloud, then data security, again, is one of the key topics. Sovereignty or digital sovereignty or data sovereignty is also one of the topics that is very hotly debated in Europe at the moment, and where organizations are trying to understand what are the practical steps that we need to take, and what does sovereignty or digital sovereignty actually mean for us as an organization, because it's usually a term that's used for nation states and not organizations. So we're currently in the process of translating, what does it mean for us. But this focus on security has always been there when we talked about cloud, and I've been looking at the cloud market for many years now, and security is always the key challenge, number one challenge. And then we see cost, of course, coming as well, because we have seen this accelerated public cloud adoption in last year and this year. But for some organizations, if it hasn't happened in this very contained way or very efficient way, then we see that the costs can spiral out of control. And there's a lot of focus now on controlling the costs more tightly. And in my opinion, the biggest challenge in Europe is skills shortage. Because every organization that I talk to, they want to hire cloud talent. They want to fill these new roles that are emerging, but they're just not enough people out there with, with the right skills. So from my customer conversations, I would say this is probably the biggest challenge here. And we see a lot of efforts from the large cloud providers to educate people, to help people to get these cloud skills. And one of the reasons or one of the consequences from the skills shortage is that digital leaders are actually using third-party providers quite extensively, more than their peers. So that is also one of the criteria that sets digital leaders apart, is that they are using third-party services to deal with the complexity. And then if you think about a cloud journey or a journey to the edge, We asked where are you using these third-party providers primarily, and the number one for digital leaders is the migrations. So when they do cloud migrations or when they start to implement edge solutions or migrate workloads also to the edge, then that's where they use third-party providers to accelerate the process, but also to do this assessment and make sure that they are migrating the right applications and the right data sets. And then the second step is managed services. So once you've migrated, who's going to operate your cloud and edge environments? And that's again where third-party providers come into play, at least for the digital leaders, because they don't want to actually operate these environments necessarily, but they just want to use them to drive innovation. And then, of course, cloud vision strategy and roadmap is also an important part where third-party providers can help. Integration back with on-prem systems or between different cloud solutions or with the edge is also an important part. And then we have digital innovation as well. So these are some of the areas where digital leaders are using third-party providers. And they really do this to accelerate their digital journeys and also to deal with the complexity that comes from wanting to launch digital services at a much faster pace and at a much greater scale than their peers. So just a few words of advice. If you think about launching digital products and services, you should really start to think about launching them on this cloud to edge continuum. So it's not just about launching new products and services using cloud, but it's really increasingly about edge. And edge is the fastest growing part of the market at the moment. And it's also the fastest growing part when we look at how IT budgets are developing. So we see a lot of investment in edge. And so when you create your strategies, you have to include both cloud and edge in that strategy. That's at least what we see from the digital leaders. And then it's important to both build the capabilities in-house as much as you can, but to also engage third-party providers, because that can help you to accelerate your journeys, but it can also help you with the knowledge and skills transfer that you need. And then it's instead of having like a blanket approach, and like everything needs to go to the cloud or everything needs to go to the edge, what we are seeing is that right now, digital leaders are taking a differentiated approach, workload by workload or data set by data set, and really focus on the use cases that they want to achieve, both on the cloud and on the edge. So taking a use case driven approach, see where you can create the biggest customer value is a good way to select where you're going to start or continue your cloud and edge journeys. So with that, thank you very much for your attention for this presentation part. And now we are going into the panel discussion where we will go a little bit deeper into some of these topics, but this is also your chance to ask questions to the panel. So please feel free to enter your questions in the chat function and we will answer them as we go along. But with that, I would like to introduce my esteemed panel. I'm very much looking forward to having a discussion with you. And first of all, I would like to ask Cześć to introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Cześć. I'm principal engineer at Intel, and my role is define and architect the next generation of edge architectures. And I'm looking from device to the cloud as a continuum for edge. I'm very happy to be here with the rest of the team.
Great, thank you very much. And then next up, I would like to ask Michael to introduce yourself.
All right, yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Hanisch. I'm the head of technology for Amazon Web Services for the DACH region. And yeah, as AWS, I mean, we're looking very much at this cloud and edge continuum, right, and trying to help our customers really innovate and become digital leaders themselves by focusing on the value creation and on the digital transformation and reducing their infrastructure burden in the cloud, but also like on premises in their edge footprint. So that's something that we really care about.
Great, thank you. And then Martin.
Morning, everyone. My name is Martin Jager. I'm heading the Edge practice within the TSystems or Deutsche Telekom IT Solutions part. Really looking forward to this panel discussion. to all the discussions that are ahead of us. And thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but definitely not least, Dirk.
Yeah, good morning also from my side to everybody. Dirk Reinhardt, also from TSystems. Here I'm responsible for what we call Campus Edge. And this is the trademark at TSystems for combining the most important digital drivers, such as the cloud edge continuum, but also connectivity, to work with our clients to push forward digitalization.
Great, thank you very much. So you can see we have a great expertise on this panel. So I look forward to the questions from the audience as well. But to get us started, we have prepared 4 questions that we want to dive into, starting from talking about digital business and then diving deeper into the edge solutions, because there's so much happening at the edge. So we want to spend some time here to really get into the details. We will also talk about cloud and then the role of third-party providers as well. But we are going to take them one step at a time. So the first question that we want to explore is around the digital business and launching digital services. What are the challenges that you see in that your customers have when they are launching digital products and services? Do you also see this change in personas that we see? It's not just the CIO anymore, but there are other people of the leadership team that are involved in these decisions. And then which are the areas where you see that companies are launching new digital products and services? And I know this is quite a mouthful, but if you want to start, Dirk, maybe to share some of your experiences as well.
Yes, happy to do so. I think what we see with our clients, working with our customers, of course, digitalization is nothing new. Over the past years and decades, we have seen digital technologies driving a lot of innovation and change in business processes. And it really has been and is even more now and in future addressing the full value chain at companies. But what is changing now is where in the past mainly changes have been driven or digitalization has been happening in everything that could be addressed via IT services. So probably we all have the picture in mind where we have marketing campaigns being supported by artificial intelligence, or to stick with AI to identify how a new launched product is being recognized, perceived in the market. All such things that can be covered well via IT solutions and are taking place in the IT space. Now, what is happening is digitalization also in operations technologies, like manufacturing, for instance, as a space, or physical spaces. So anything where usually you would have very autonomously working machines, probably which you need to shield from access, which you really want to work, which are creating the heartbeat of production. It can be manufacturing. It can also be in the public space, for instance, where you need to take care for security. It could be in healthcare. And so on. So everything where we can imagine we have processes that are really physical. So now the challenge for companies is to introduce IT solutions like artificial intelligence, for instance, but augmented reality also is a great tool to augment the human-machine interface, because people can use augmented reality to visualize capabilities and states of machines, can get at or can interact via augmented reality with machines. We, of course, have robotics and so on. These now need to be integrated into operations technologies. And the challenge here is how to do that in a way that via merging with IT, the security level is maintained. Usually, you need to make decisions very fast. So to give us an example, it could be computer vision supervising a production step, or supervising a process like a running machine. So as soon as there is something out of order or a dangerous situation is arising, you immediately need to react. Or in other spaces, data needs to be staying on premise. You don't want to send it anywhere else. So it's a new category of requirements, and it's not just integrating IT. The last challenge I want to raise is, I think you beautifully shaped that earlier. So for most companies currently, I think it is not only the innovation part, but the optimization part to increase resilience and to increase flexibility. But the cost and budget corridor, that is constricted. So we really see our clients need to act with a certain amount of budget to ensure that they are profitable. And how do you come up with an ecosystem that allows you to use the newest technology directly where the sparks are flying, so where everything is happening? And how do you integrate IT smoothly into your operations technology? And this is something where the cloud concept really has been powerful, because it's an ecosystem full of very mature services, but you can't use the cloud in every case directly when you're talking about operations technology. So this is where we now need something that helps us to bridge the gap between the cloud and operations technology. And this is a challenge companies need to overcome. It's an end-to-end challenge. It's an ecosystem challenge to use synergies. And this is why we see also that now more and more top management is involved, because it's decisions to be made that address companies end to end, and that cannot be driven anymore by solitaire areas. So this, I would say, is the greatest challenges at the moment.
Great. Thank you very much, Dirk. I think you described it great, because this whole convergence between IT and OT is also something that we have seen coming for several years, but now with the maturity of edge and cloud solutions, we can actually implement it, right? And I think that's a very interesting time in the market. And I would also like to ask a question to you, Michael, because you are of course, one of the ecosystem partners who provides this cloud to edge solutions coming from AWS. So what are you seeing in your customer base?
Yeah, I mean, there's, as you've said, right? I mean, there's a big focus on integrating IT and OT, because it's becoming more clear that as we digitize, as customers digitize their business processes, right, they need to become more efficient. And Dirk already mentioned like the often very narrow budget corridors, right, together with the skills shortage. But the question always is, how do you make more with less? And that's fundamentally what the cloud also is about, right? It's about raising the business impact and the effectiveness of your IT staff that you have, right? And enabling all the other people within the company. Doesn't all have to be within IT to actually, yeah, be successful and contribute to this digitalization. And a lot of these concepts that we've seen in IT, like we've mentioned, like DevOps, for instance, or AI ops, like in the study responses, for instance, a lot of these discussions have been ongoing in the IT world for a long time, right? But we now see them applied towards the OT space as well, right? Which in the past was moving at a much slower pace, really cordoned off from the global networks, from the IT in many cases. And this barrier is somewhat shrinking, right? I mean, this barrier is not going to disappear, right? Because of security reasons, for instance, because there's also obviously different vendors involved, like when you talk about like smart machinery and so on. But it is really about taking what's important from the OT, so efficiency, for instance, and super reliability and low latency. So you can really react to the machine state and any changes, interruptions in milliseconds or less, right? But taking that and just modernizing that by applying, let's say, more modern practices that the IT world has been developing over the last couple of years. That's definitely where like edge computing can help by moving some of those practices, some of the infrastructure and services that that have been developed like in the cloud towards the edge where the sparks are flying. I guess that's a good picture, right? Really moving that towards the machines and onto the factory floors, so that this part of the organization can benefit as well.
Right. Right, so it's a real transformation that is happening, and I think when we also consider the security aspect that was so highly ranked in the study, right? If we connect these systems that have previously been offline now to the grid and to the cloud, then security, I think, is also a key element that people need to get right. Great. I would like to move on to the next topic, and I'll just quickly bring it up so that we are all on the same page here. But we are going to talk about edge, basically. So which edge solutions do we see emerging? And I would also like us to discuss what is actually the edge, because we see many different definitions out there at the moment. About what edge solutions can look like, also because they are so industry specific, right? So an edge solution in healthcare looks very different than an edge solution in manufacturing or in oil and gas or in transport and logistics. And then I would like to explore the challenges that we currently see in implementing edge solutions, but also the benefits, and with a big focus on the use cases, because I think in edge it's really important to understand what people are actually doing on the edge to inspire each other and to really see what's possible, because I think they're almost like limitless opportunities on the edge, but it's just about getting ideas about what we can do. So Martin, I would like to come to you first, actually, and ask you if you could share your view on, first of all, what is the edge in your view, and what are some of the solutions that you see emerging?
Thank you, Carla, for the introduction. I think that you summarized it very nicely. I mean, to pitch it off like that, I'll try to bridge it and perhaps provide a bit more detail and perhaps also information as I see it from my perspective, TSystems as a company as well. So what do we see actually as a trends currently? I mean, right? I mean, there's a tremendous amount of data being translated to the cloud. There's different reasons for that. And what we see and what we get to see, and Carla, I think that you also see in the researches that you guys do, I mean, the amounts will grow. And it would go very fast. The amount of devices that produces the data, at least to my knowledge, by 2025 or even further that, would be trillions of the IoT devices that can actually provide the data, right? That, I think there is the right place then for the edge as such, because the cloud cannot do just everything, right? I mean, we are used to that, but with the amount of data growing, I think that there is the right time for the edge to be introduced. That, as we see as the right time, and we as a company would like to be in a game and really help the customers and the end users really to benefit from it, right? So the edge, as we see it, that would be the decentralized architecture. I mean, really positioning the physical hardware, various sizes, really going from very tiny devices all the way up almost to a server line devices as well, really as close to the end users, to the devices as possible. You can really have them placed as a tiny node directly next to a robotic arm, so to speak, in a manufacturing plant, or you can have it sitting in a server rack, acting as a small data center that actually does a lot of data processing, moving tremendous amounts of OT workloads as well. And the challenges that we get to see in that in multiple discussions, and there's really a lot of discussions ongoing in the background currently. The amount of hardware that is required. I mean, all the customers, and you named it in your study at the beginning. I mean, the customers are really being cautious about the expenses, and also with all the environmental challenges they get to see, then the amount of hardware being purchased is one of the crucial elements. Of course, the latency that always will remain in a game. However, it might not be on a top position, as we learned. What is coming to the first positions, however, is the data privacy and sovereignty. I think we'll get to see this kind of a message very frequently. There's a lot of these discussions ongoing as well. But yeah, and also one of the key elements is really the as I started with the amount of data, so the data pre-processing. And these parts, I mean, these are one of the elements that are a key that actually allows the end customers to really do very, very quick and fast processing of data directly on the site. And just the necessary and secure parts of the data would then go to the cloud. So that actually ensures the edge cloud continuum. This will remain, and I see that going forward as well. But this is the current situation that we are in. We as TSystems or Deutsche Telekom IT Solutions are building a platform that's being called the Edge Air that actually helps us really to tackle these challenges and really at the end of the day help the end customers. You also mentioned some of the benefits for the customers. Really, to name a few, I mean, of course, I mean the driver would be the hardware agnostic discussion, right? I mean, really, we are trying to leverage that. The high availability of service, right? This is the one of the key elements, and then really coming up with a platform that really does pretty much everything almost in the real time. So latency would be resolved. 5G is a very, very important and famous topic really to be addressed, and these devices are capable of the 5G, so that's a future way to go. And then of course the compatibility, so this is and data security, of course. I think that was also mentioned in some of the questions at the beginning, so this is really being handled and ensured that the data is really secure and sovereign before anybody, I mean, it's stored locally directly at the customer premises and so on. You also mentioned the use cases, and I'm being cautious of time in order not to steal the show. Perhaps I can name a few. For example, the KUKA robotics would be a very nice example of how the nodes are being placed directly to the robotic arm. And for the customer, it actually gives the benefit for the maintenance cycles of devices. So the predictive maintenance really is one of the drivers there, where we actually allow the devices to pre-process and process the data coming from the robots themselves, and actually by using a predictive analytics really to be able to tell, okay, by this time you should replace or change these parts, otherwise the whole assembly line will come to a standstill. That would actually provide some additional cost to the customer then at the end of the day. Or there are some other large manufacturing customers that I can mention here, where we do actually provide a robust platform, so to say, a small data center that's based locally for the customer to enable them to run the OT workloads and very fast. I mean, thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Martin. Many interesting elements that you mentioned here. I would like to ask a question also to you, Cześć. First of all, how would you describe this cloud to edge continuum? What is edge in your view? And then also, what are some of the use cases that you see in your customer base?
Well, yeah, definitely. So I think it's kind of interesting because like some months ago, I had the same question by one of my execs at Intel, and I described Edge, and he said, "But Edge is everywhere, is everything, right?" And I said, "Yes, sort of, yes, because today it's kind of when you see as Martin was saying, right? So we have compute very close into the robotic arms, and then you have all the way down into the cloud where some of the companies are storing the business logic of the companies itself, right? So I think honestly, when you look at Edge, that has been expanding over the last few years. We had some pilots and deployments like 5 years ago where Edge was a single location with traffic steering and everything processed locally, but now Edge has been expanded like the universe, right, to all these different tiers. I think that one of the fundamental aspects that we need to consider when we look at the Edge and this continuum from device to the cloud is really where we place the use cases and why do we place there, and especially now because like latency used to be like one of the like passwords for Edge, like hey, you need super ultra low latency, but today if you do a ping into some of the instances in AWS, you may get 3 milliseconds latency depending on the load, right? So is really Edge necessary? The answer is yes. It's a combination between the two worlds, right? Because like sometimes network connectivity drops, and we know that some of our customers that they are combining IT, OT type of deployments with the shop floor. They don't want to stop the show running, right? So they have to produce cars non-stop, right? But the logic remains into the cloud. So I think that in the next generation or current generation of edge architectures, we have to be very smart on these reliability and failover mechanisms, and acknowledging that there is a lot of things that happens on the cloud, but be ready when things cannot be handled by cloud, and edge acting as a kind of the main engine having these things happen, right? And similarly for some of these OT type of workloads like robotic arms and stuff like that, that still we are not at the microsecond latency to the cloud, right? So that's something that has to happen local, but you have to connect all the different pieces. And in terms of the use cases, I think Martin did a great job, like covering lots of them, like the shop floor management, even inventory, or even managing the cars when they are produced, going into the parking lot of the manufacturing facility. We have a lot of work that is happening here in EMEA with healthcare customers that they are looking into use edge as a means to rapidly analyze X-rays or stuff like that to do better treatment from the customers, right? And interestingly, here is where security and data sovereignty becomes a key element, right? Because when you start including data sensitive from the users, or even the models that you're training, like we have some experiences with COVID algorithms that we had to train at scale, but the challenge is, okay, you have multiple thousands of doctors that they are annotating some of these images. Now, how you do this kind of data privacy, and you abstract, the details of the patient from the learning process, right? And this really provides a very interesting type of challenges, because you need to train these models in sort of a federated way, using cloud, using on-premise. You need to be sure that data is abstracted. You need to be sure that then when you generate these models are protected, and all this combination that happens between device and to the cloud needs to be addressed by the technologies that as Intel, TSystems, and AWS are implementing, right? For me, the most interesting and other use cases are in smart cities. So, for example, here in Barcelona, we are doing like scale trials with smart cities where we combine safety, we combine like logistics management and stuff like that, and the same type of problems, right? You want to have like the business happening all the time, but sometimes you want to offload like some heavy compute onto the cloud for TCO perspective, right? I think for me, like one of the more interesting challenges but opportunities at the same time is how do we do the orchestration of those services, and we have to acknowledge that really edge is a live entity. Load is going to change, network is going to change, disconnections will happen, systems will go down, will go up. So we really need to do what from Intel we call the life cycle management of the services, because that's a must. I mean, when you talk to the end customers, they think on the use cases and they give everything else for granted. So for granted means they are going to run forever, no security leakages, and that's where all this system architecture that we've been talking from all the panelists with me. I think that's where we try to provide the value added from ecosystem perspective.
And I think that's a very good point that we haven't really touched on so far, right? But that's the whole process of like managing and securing and operating this kind of infrastructure. And that's also where this kind of like where like cloud and edge as a continuum makes sense, right? As I said before, because then you can take these processes and these architectures that span the continuum, that figure out, okay, where do I place, for instance, this training job on healthcare data, right? I mean, it's probably in the cloud because of the mass of data. But then once you actually train this model to detect whatever, right? I mean, certain tumors or whatever, then you want them to run in your hospital, because you don't want to say, okay, no diagnosis today because their internet is down, right? I mean, that's not something that you can do, or you cannot halt the production line because of bandwidth issues, right? But managing all that is something that is really a challenge at scale. But that's exactly where where the edge can benefit from the cloud, from the processes, right? Because some of those use cases are are very large, right? I mean, we're working with Volkswagen on their digital production platform, right? And at this stage, it's really just about automating or increasing the level of automation and smartness, let's say, for like their 125 factories. But that's already 10 million machines that are being connected, right? So that's just this one company is a massive number. And of course, you cannot hire like 100,000 IT admins just to monitor these machines, right? That's something that needs to work at scale. That's why DevOps, AIOps, and all these kind of concepts like infrastructure as a service, for instance, that people have come to appreciate, like in the cloud, really need to be applied to the edge, right? Because if you don't, then, well, I mean, if you just place a PC or a server like next to a robotic arm, then it's not edge, right? Then it's just another server, basically, right? The magic really happens when you become part of this continuum, and you can really benefit from the services and from the operating efficiencies that you can now get from this continuum.
Great. Thank you both, Chesh and Mike. I think you've already taken us into the next question, which is more about the cloud end of this continuum. And maybe, Michael, you can just continue to elaborate a little bit on, how do you connect these edge to cloud solutions? What is important? Do you start in the public cloud and go to the edge, or is it the other way around? And what are some of the key aspects that customers need to keep in mind to connect successfully?
Yeah, I mean, different things, right? Like I said, right? It's really edge and cloud, right? So otherwise, you won't benefit from many of these advantages over the last couple of years. Of course, connectivity, like in the network sense, is important, right? That's also what we've talked about earlier about the divide between OT and IT. A lot of today's, or I should probably say yesterday's, OT security is really by, well, not connecting to anything, right? And just hoping that it stays that way. And that's something that we need to move away from. Also, if we think about use cases that are not just within one company, right? Those are maybe easier to secure, but more and more companies are also looking at automating across their supply chain, for instance, right? And extending their edge to their partner network, for instance, and to the fleets of trucks and trains coming in, for instance. Then you really increase your surface area, right? So you need to think about securing and securely connecting all of that, which is, for instance, where like 5G campus networks come into play, right? Among other things. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's really taking a lot of the lessons from the cloud and taking this idea of having a programmable infrastructure, right, at different sizes, if you will. So the public cloud is the largest size. You can consume as much or as little as you want, right? If you trimmed it down to the edge, then there's different form factors. There might be just a cloud-connected microcontroller, right? Or you might have like industrial PCs running gateway software that do quite a bit of the processing locally. Or you even have like, I don't know, one or more racks of servers that take care of like most of the processing locally, but it can still be managed centrally, and that can still become part of this continuum by determining which of the data should be sent to the cloud for like a central monitoring of operational efficiency, for instance, or to avoid having to send IT people to all the shop floors, to all the factories, like every now and then, right? Really setting up this sort of like remote management and programmability. Which is the first step to actually get to a point where you can automate and orchestrate all that. I think for me that's a critical part of the story.
Great, thank you, Michael. And one of the takeaways that I have from listening to your inputs, all of you, is that we are talking about quite complex infrastructure that we are building. Both in terms of understanding the data flows across the continuum, but also in terms of securing it and then orchestrating it. And I really also like the point that you made, Chesh, about that people just assume that it will work, but actually when we bring in the edge, that it might fall over, right? There's a bigger chance that it will fall over because suddenly we are not in a controlled environment like the data center, but we are actually really out there, right? So the last question I would like us to address is really about where do we bring in third-party providers, and what can third-party providers help us do? And I would like to come back to you, Dirk, if you can just give your view, how do you help customers be successful with these solutions and deal with the complexity?
Yeah, I think what I just would like to wrap up, because you are addressing the complexity. I think on the one hand side, with edge computing, we have now this very beautiful tool, because it's just extending the good concept of cloud. But as a customer, I can grab a part of the cloud and take it to where I need it physically as well, and still have the same level of management, stability, and so on. And I can also make sure that my requirements like data sovereignty are being maintained, security, and so on. So I think that is something where edge is less complex than just building up my own IT infrastructure to support OT and connected. Of course, the complexity which is now coming in is the question in there is that operations technology ecosystems. We are thinking of the manufacturing machines, of robotics, and so on. Now we have not only software we want to integrate here, we also want to make use of the new data that is being created. So we have IoT, we have sensors and actuators. We want to integrate them with backend systems like MES, SCADA, and so on, to really augment our end-to-end processes. And this integration step, of course, is something that requires new skills, how to architect that in a way not to jeopardize the closed loops, to maintain the strict requirements I might have security-wise. And this is very individually driven by the use cases of our customers. And usually, my experience is that that companies, decision makers, they have a very clear perspective on what they need. And there is a lot of ideas in the functional areas that are operating the value chain. So the question is how to put that together, how to make the right decisions on services, on software capabilities, how to integrate that, how to shape, how to make out of the digitalization strategy a roadmap that is cost sensitive. Of course, the investments need to result in value add quickly, and to put that into the right sequence, and to really operate the integration. That is something where we see that experts will be needed, of course, to do this. And also this question of skills is not only in the setup and advisory stage. Of course, the solutions, the edge solutions, I think Martin elaborated on that. So it's operated services. So it's about operations, because our clients want to focus on their business processes. Like with cloud, they would like to consider the edge cloud continuum as a black box. So it needs to react on demand. It needs to be able to change fast if the business needs to evolve fast. And I think this very frequently happens. Even if I now level up a manufacturing step with artificial intelligence, I can be sure that in the next month or half year, I need to update my solution. So we need to have this level of quality here. And this is something where the professional solutions also need to be integrated, and they are coming from third parties. So in a nutshell, it is the expertise to decide on how to operationalize digital strategy as a roadmap. Then, of course, to do the integration, and then to do the operations.
Great. Thank you very much, Dirk. And that takes us to the last part that we had planned for today, which is the Q&A. And thank you for submitting questions. And the first question is actually for you, Martin. And it's about how robust are edge solutions actually? Are there any security, maintenance, or lock-in concerns?
Right. Well, basically, as I mentioned at the beginning, the products or the solutions that we are building, I mean, they scalable. So I mean, they can be really up from the smallest devices, really up to the server, like really devices that are server sized and based in the server room. So I mean, the architecture is done. This is maybe for more of a technical discussion, of course, but I mean, like from a high level perspective, it's done the way that the products are or solutions are robust. I mean, really able to provide the best security possible for the customer, really, in order to keep the amounts of data secure, sovereign, really based locally directly with the customer. So from that perspective, I see that as a positive thing and a big advantage of the edges that we are building. This is also something that's a very good factor for the end users and customers. From the logins that you were mentioning, as I stated before, so really, I mean, our aim is really to be agnostic in all directions. Here, really working with various teams within TSystems and Deutsche Telekom in order really just to ensure that we will not be stuck really with one provider and one software vendor and so on, really, and then really this can cause a lot of damage then at the end of the day for the customer. So I don't foresee that to happen. We were being cautious of that at the beginning, and we are really trying to work our way through that, really cooperating with guys from Intel and AWS, all the other hyperscalers as well also.
Great. Thank you, Martin. So not it's a point that you are aware of, but that you are addressing is what I'm taking away. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. There's also one question for you, Cześć, about and it's about the data. You talked a lot about the data from smart cities and in healthcare that is really driving this edge to cloud revolution. So how do you see this whole industrial transformation play out?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think data it's going to be something that we will have to figure out as not only ecosystem but society as well, how this is handled and what it can generate and where it can be generated, right? Because, like, for example, in the case of smart cities, like you can use the data that is generated by the cameras, which are streams of videos, and do some safety analysis and basically identify things that need to be addressed by police or any governmental entity. But you can also get that information and maybe there's a change the design of the city based on the analysis that you do, and this is something that some second level of compute that happens with that data into the cloud, right? And then maybe doing some changes or even maybe abstracting some of that data and maybe doing some sort of new business models that can be utilized for optimizing maybe some logistics or even like some retail deployment and stuff like that. So I think that, and I'm going a little bit philosophical here, I know, but I think that we have data, right? And data can be used in many different levels of processing and generates many different levels of value added. And I think that there will be a combination of what's licit and what is not licit, and how all the rules that we have in Europe and in other countries dictate what can be done and what can't be done, right? Because to be honest, I think that when you look at AI, and I have people in my team that is just focused on how AI can change the different edge deployment and what use cases can be done and what we can learn with AI. I mean, that's huge. I mean, today, for instance, we're using some AI models that automatically tune how the cameras are located and how they and help simple models on the edge to evolve over time and be more accurate with the job that they do. But you could think about that maybe in the future you make models change and do some more let's call it mutation over time. And I don't know, I'm just thinking a little bit as I said, blue sky, but I think that for us it's really we have to understand really where the data goes and what is extracted with that data and how we can really like protect the data even from ourselves, right? I think that this is something that we'll have to be very conscious about, and especially as this continuum from device to the cloud change, and just keep in mind that data can we don't know what we can extract with that data, right? I mean, there will be lots of new algorithms coming, new ways of processing the data, new insights that you can take. So I think that this is something that we'll have to track as a society. I know it's not very technical, but it's an important point, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. So we have, with all the data, we have almost unlimited potential, but we need to use it, of course, in the frameworks that we put up as a society. I think with that, we are out of time. So I will thank you very much for all your inputs, for this great inputs that you've delivered. I found it really interesting to see that we are really working towards realizing the potential of the data that we are generating on the edge, and also the compute possibilities that we have, but then the using all the technologies of best practices that we've already built on the cloud and try to bring it to the edge and drive this continuum really as one platform rather than two separate platforms. And even though there are, of course, still some steps that we need to take, I think you all showed that there are already very interesting use cases operating at scale that people can learn from and get inspired from, and also that there are many great solutions out there, but also great partners there that can help customers to be successful both on their cloud and edge journey. So thank you very much again for all your inputs. Thank you to the audience for the questions, and I hope that you learned something, and please do reach out to us. And I'll just bring up just a second our contact details so you can find us again if you want to learn more. And do reach out. We are very open to having a discussion, to learning about the projects that you're working on, and very happy to share our insights as well. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful day.